I'm a professional Scrum trainer. I also own a small consultancy company based on the south of Spain. And I talk a lot about myths and fallacies of Scrum. I train a lot of students every year, maybe more than 1,000 students every year. And I'm always talking about the myths and fallacies. And this is what I'm trying to bring to you today. Let's have a look at Scrum 21 years later. Scrum is old. I mean, it has legal age to drink in the US, which is good, but also has gone through a lot all over his life. It's the most common agile method used in organizations. How many of you use Scrum in your organization somehow? Raise your hand. Yeah, the rest of you are sleeping or what? So Scrum is pretty widely used. Also pretty badly used. I'm going to see some of those. Scrum is simple. You got this, you got a product backlog, you got a sprint planning, sprint backlog, you got a sprint, you do your daily Scrum, you get into your sprint review, and you produce and deliver an increment. Then you retrospect and start from the beginning again. At the end of the day, there is no such thing as we do Agile. Agile is a way of thinking. It's a way of better delivering software. And Scrum is just a way to implement Agile in your company. It's a way to limit risk, to provide often and frequent increments of valuable software to your customers. At the end of every sprint, we deliver a done increment. Working software that we can put on production or potentially release to our customers. How many of you do that? Raise your hand. How many of you have arrived to companies where they say, we do Scrum, and they had a release cycle of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? So what the hell are you doing? So this is simple to do. Scrum implements the 3 legs of empirical process control. Empirical process control is simple. We're transparent. We know all what's going on. We can inspect. We check our work as we do it, and we're transparent about it. So transparency is the first pillar. And we adapt. It's okay to change our tactical direction at any time. It doesn't have to be at the end of the spring or at the beginning of the spring. That's why we have the daily Scrums for. Scrum is coming from rugby. Probably you knew that already. How many of you know rugby or have had the pleasure of playing rugby? Okay, I will tell you a little story about rugby. I used to play rugby, and I did that for a few years. And my last time was probably 3 or 4 years ago, where I was playing with the university team of my hometown. And there is 2 types of people in a rugby team. There is the people who run, which is mostly half of the team, and they are the fat guys. You can imagine what I was playing on, okay? These guys you see here, these are the fat guys. They try to get the ball moving again, getting play, and they do that by pushing the other team's fat guys. And you do that as a unit. You know your job within that mess, and you follow your job. And as much as it can seem that everybody's doing only pushing, we're doing a lot of things out there. That's the reason Scrum is called Scrum. As in rugby, the ball gets passed within the team as it moves as a unit up the field. Do you have this feeling when you do Scrum with your teams? Because I don't. I don't have the feeling. I go to a client, I go to a customer, and I don't have the feeling that we are working in the same direction. Actually, I have the feeling that what people care about is give me my job, give me my user story so I can do my thing during 2 weeks and then come to the last day of the sprint and say, oh, I couldn't finish it, but it doesn't matter. Burn my story points. And there is a difference between the teams that do this Scrum thing mechanically and the teams who do this Scrum thing professionally. Let's have a look at them. So, first myth. I go to YouTube this morning and I say, Scrum is easy. And I get these results with, I don't know, 1 million views, 125,000 views, 220,000 views. And you know what happens, because you've lived it, is that your company says, we're going to do Scrum. And nobody knows about what Scrum is. And you say, okay, so you're going to be the Scrum Master, you're going to be the product owner, and you're going to be the development team. Because you were the project manager, you were the product manager, and you were the development team. And then you ask, what was this Scrum thing? And they say, I don't know. Just go to YouTube, look Scrum in 10 minutes, and this is the right way to do it. And we're doing Scrum. You will probably never ask an electrician to go on YouTube and see a video about plumbing and think that he's a plumber. But people keep doing this. They don't invest in training themselves, in learning themselves. They don't even invest in Scrum Masters. So how many of you had the experience of, oh, you're a Scrum Master, and then you had to find your way on the role? Someone said, you're a Scrum Master, and I was like, what? And then I had to read, I had to learn, and I had to follow all of that just by myself. And if you look at the, this is the 11th State of Scrum report, I believe. If you look at what companies complain the most is about, we don't really understand what Scrum is about. Yes, we understand that this is 3 roles, 3 artifacts, 5 events, but we don't really understand what Scrum is about. We don't really know how to do the old thing into this new thing. Because what we want is Scrum to be named and to be changed so it can fit us. You know what is the most common thing that I hear from customers? The most common thing that I hear is, yeah, well, we're special. Scrum won't work here, as per the book. And I say, why are you special? Oh, because we do banking, or we do insurance, or we do, I don't know, adult media, videos, whatever. And they say all the same, we're special. This is not going to work here. We need some adaptations. And I always tell them, okay, let's try to make it work as it is, and then we'll make any adaptation you want, if you still want it. Scrum is simple, but it's not easy. This is something that Kees Schwaber has been saying for years, and it's true. It's very simple. It's a very simple framework, but it's not easy to implement. And when you face something that is not easy, you don't try to change it. You embrace it, and you try to get along with it. Fallacy, 3 questions on the daily Scrum. This is new. I've done this presentation a couple of times, and yesterday I was sitting over there and I saw a colleague, I don't know if he's here, saying that he was using the 3 questions at the daily Scrum to make sure that people was busy. And that's the reason the 3 questions are there. So people is busy. People have work to do. Well, that's not true. So the fact that you've been using a hammer all your life to break fingers doesn't mean that a hammer is used to break fingers. The 3 questions on the daily Scrum, this is just for beginners. This is just a way to start a conversation. But after a while, teams don't need those 3 questions. They don't need to explain what they've been working on yesterday towards the spring goal. They just come there and say, okay, we have an impediment here and here, and this is the way it happens. Let me tell you something else. How many of you Scrum Masters go to the daily Scrum to facilitate? You know that you shouldn't be there, do you? So the daily Scrum is a meeting by the development team for the development team. Scrum Master, yeah, he can come, Well, he's definitely optional. He doesn't have to be there to facilitate. And you may ask yourself, well, if I'm not there, they're going to take more than 15 minutes to do the daily Scrum. Maybe they will take the whole morning, and they won't be working. Okay, but maybe the problem is that they're not understanding Scrum. Maybe this is something that we have to do better. So what is the goal of the daily Scrum? Another myth, Sprint Zero and Inception. How many of you use Sprint Zero and Inception? None of you? You know these concepts? You heard of them? So these are very popular in some countries. And Sprint Zero is used as an evolution of the iteration zero in XP, where you just use an iteration to set up your environment, delivery pipeline, infrastructure, architecture. And Inception, it's something that now people, you know the design sprint from Google? Design sprint? So this is something similar at his heart. So traditional development delays the realization of value. We just come and say, we're going to do some requirements, then we're going to do design and architecture, then we're going to do coding, then we're going to do QA and testing, and implementation, and blah, blah, blah. And then on the year 2, we realized that our product is crap. Yeah, but we've been working for a year and a half. The fact that we've been making mistakes doesn't mean that we need to hand to them, okay? All these techniques, they also delay the realization of value. I see companies now doing a design sprint, and an Inception, design sprint, zero. Then the normal sprints, then they come the testing sprints, then we got the hardening sprints, and at the end we release. Does it sound familiar? But we're doing Agile, because we're using all the Agile names. So these techniques, when used to delay realization of value, instead of serve as feedback loops, they are exactly the same as we've been doing before. Another myth, the sprint demo. Oh, we got a demo at the end of every sprint, do we? Yeah? So have you seen yourselves in this situation? Yeah, we had the sprint demo. We're going to show you some things that we've been doing, but this is not actually complete. So yeah, it really doesn't matter. The important thing is just tell me the story points that you burned. This is what we care about. How many story points did we burn? We did half of this user story, so probably we should burn half of the story points. Okay? This is what a sprint review should look like a stock photo. But the whole point is that it should be a business meeting. This is where all the discussion around business happens in Scrum, on the sprint review. You need stakeholders, you need the development team. This is led by the product owner, and we discuss the market, we discuss the funding, we discuss our plans, we adapt our product backlog at the end of it, okay? So we get the sprint, increment, current business condition, our product backlog, we discuss, we rearrange, and we update our product backlog with our most current strategy just before starting the next sprint. Some of my students, they tell me, yeah, but I don't get to have stakeholders at my sprint demos because, yeah, they don't come, they don't show interest, so we do this just ourselves. The important thing is the product owner, isn't it? And I always tell them, maybe you don't get stakeholders because no one cares about your product. And that's a bad signal. When no one cares about your product, that means that you may be out of a job in an unknown amount of time. Another fallacy, Scrum needs user story and story points. How many of you use user stories and story points? How many of you have beautiful Excels, Jiras, reports based on story points? Don't you love them? Don't you love spending 3, 4, 5 hours every week estimating with your development team? It's lovely, isn't it? But Scrum doesn't need any of that. Scrum talks about the concept estimated, but but it doesn't say has to be in story points, or it doesn't say that you need to use user stories. Because if you use user stories for everything, you end up with some nice examples, like as a developer, I want to download the development environment so I can develop. This is a real user story I've seen in a customer, okay? You don't need any of that. You may want to use those as tools, but you don't need any of those. And definitely you don't need story points. There is way better ways to estimate and actually know if your team is delivering or not, rather than story points. I went to a customer last year, and they told me, this year our objective is delivering twice as much story points as last year. I said, wonderful, that's impressive. So how much software did you put in your customer's hands? And he told me, yeah, we're not prepared for that. Then that's fine. You have really achieved your goal to have double the story points. We will just ask the teams to estimate twice as much. This is what it looks like. So we get an early picture of a team estimating, and estimating what the Scrum Master / Agile Coach / Project Manager wants, okay? And this is not a nice environment for Scrum teams. Because at the end of the day, when your company is telling you, we don't care about quality, we don't care about delivering value to our customers, what we do care is about burning story points, this is bad. How many of you, do you think that you can fail and still delivering on time, on scope, and on budget? So you made those three and still failed miserably? Do you think so? Many companies, what they care about is scope, time, and budget. And they fail, because those are no metrics for value. Another fallacy, development team's commitment. Many companies, many organizations still call the commitment after the sprint planning. So we got the commitment by our development team. You know that commitment is not even a word in the Scrum Guide anymore. It was substituted by forecast 3 years ago. And the reason for that is not because we don't want people to be committed, that we want that value of commitment, but because committing to know what I will be able to deliver in 2 or 3 weeks or 30 days, it's silly. We live in a complex world. Software development is complex. I cannot commit to deliver something in 3 or 4 weeks from what I know now. This is the source of truth. This is a Scrum Guide. It's free. It's translated to I don't know how many languages. And most people doing Scrum never read it. They never read it. It's 16 pages. Damn it, it's 16 pages. You can read it when you go to the toilet. And all the source of truth about Scrum is there. And the rest of it, yeah, it's opinions, it's implementations, it's people get to know how they play the game. But the source of truth about the rules of Scrum is on the Scrum Guide. If you haven't read the Scrum Guide, just go and read the Scrum Guide. If you read the Scrum Guide just 3 years ago, go and read it now. Because some things will strike you like, oh, this was on the Scrum Guide. This was on the Scrum Guide, and I didn't even know it. Actually, by the way, the Scrum Guide will be updated in a few weeks, and you can subscribe to a webinar where Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber will be talking about the updates. Myth, there is no quality in Scrum. Of course there's not. Scrum doesn't talk about quality. The fact that it doesn't talk about quality doesn't mean that you cannot do a good job. Scrum is incomplete. The problem with companies is that this is the time they have to add in new features, and then they say, okay, we're going to deliver this, just forget the test, forget all the technical stuff, and then you get some time fighting with technical debt, and then you create more technical debt until all your available time is used fighting technical debt. And we were using Scrum Yes, you were using Scrum to create a great pile of technical debt. This is one post that I wrote 3 years ago, and it's about technical practices on Scrum teams and Kanban teams and XP teams, okay? You need to have those. You need to have great technical quality to deliver great software. Scrum, if you get a group of graduates and get them doing Scrum, you're going to have crappy software. Scrum is not going to make it better. Scrum is going to tell you early that it's crappy software. And the set of values. Scrum has values. And the Scrum Guide was updated last year to include those values. If those values are not present in your company, in your organization, in your team, you're going to get little value out of Scrum. So, Scrum by itself is not enough. You need to have great technical practices, you need to have a set of values, you need to have great people doing software to produce great software. Scrum is just going to help you providing early feedback loops and all the stuff on transparency, inspection, and adaptation. This is how we think the next 21 years are going to look like. We have this. We have the scaling challenge. And when people talk about scaling, they talk about two different things. They talk about scaling products, about large products with a lot of people involved in delivering those products. That is vertical scaling. And it has a lot of challenges, like sharing vision, like having a common set of practices, like having a tool set, like having a common delivering pipeline, reducing dependencies, integration, okay? And then we have horizontal scaling, when we have a lot of agile teams doing one or more products. And this requires a different set of things for different challenges. So growing agile practices, having a sense of community, having a set of consistent skills, having consistent technology across teams. This is Scrum Studio. This is a way of dealing with horizontal scaling, sorry, that's my Spanish coming up. Horizontal scaling, where you build a nest where Agile can thrive. And this is Nexus. This is a way to scale up your product. It's built on Scrum, it's an exoskeleton, it lets you add any practices as you want, okay? I will leave a reference slide later so you can see where to load information about those. And you need metrics. That's evidence-based management, and it's a way to understand process metrics instead of outcome metrics. Let me explain that to you quickly. We tend to measure story points, number of stories delivered, these kind of things, but what we should be measuring is how we are now, how we are today, how is our process, and only understanding the process with circumstantial metrics we can provide the current value, time to market, and ability to innovate. I will leave that on a reference slide as well. And just to finish, this quote from Gunther Verheyen, I like it. The future state of Scrum will no longer be called Scrum. What we know called Scrum will have become the norm, and organizations have reinvented themselves around it. Thank you very much.